What we're facing in Iraq now with ISIL is a greater and deeper threat to our security than we have known before. This is not some foreign conflict thousands of miles from home that we can hope to ignore.
The Brits get it, but do we? Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. The ISIS scare now escalating. The UK raising its terror threat level from substantial to severe, saying an attack is highly likely. To former CIA intelligence officer Michael Scheuer, who says we should be taking the same action too. Why? Why do you say that, Michael?
Well, if anything, sir, we have a more serious threat here domestically than the British do. We have 12 million people in this country. We don't know who they are, what they do, where they come from. We're confidently sure that every month a number of Arabs or Pakistanis come across the border illegally in the south. And to face facts as an adult, Neil, the one thing we could have done to secure the United States the day after 9/11 was to close the southern border and bring people in an orderly manner after a proper review. We have not done that yet. And so we're standing next to a bonfire with a garden hose and talking about raising security levels. Of course we should raise them, but they're utterly meaningless in that the FBI and local and state police people don't have a clue about who's in this country.
They might already be here then.
Oh, I think so, sir. You'd have to be silly not to take advantage of that opportunity. And you can say many things about the Islamists, but silly they are not. They cut off Mr. Doyle's head to try to lure us back into Iraq, for example. They're not dumb people. They may be brutal, but they're not dumb. We're the dumb ones.
Is the difference with them this time in this group, what do you call it, ISIS or ISIL or just bad guys, period, that they have a lot of money? That unlike a lot of other terrorist groups in the past, they seem to have a network, and they seem to have a well-financed network at that.
Well, money is important, Neil, without a question. They always called it the sinew of war. But what we're seeing in Iraq, in Syria, and elsewhere is the maturation of a process that started with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. Some of these people have been involved in this organization, or one of these organizations, for 30 years and more. And their networks of acquiring money, of moving recruits, of using propaganda are true and tested, much more durable than we could imagine. And we're still stuck in this mindset of calling these people a terrorist group. You know, they may indeed do terrorist things that terrify, but they're inching more and more toward a conventional type force that we're going to have to deal with, not with air power, but at some point with an enormous military effort on the ground.
But the reason why I refer to that money issue, Michael, is that I've talked to a number of military types who say that they can afford to pay big money, essentially, for mercenaries, and that changes the complexion and the recruiting draw that they have across the globe.
Well, there's probably something to that, Neil, but my gosh, how many insurgencies have there been? How many people have had the opportunity to train and then go home and train other people? Do they use some mercenaries? I bet they certainly do. But the cause they are fighting for certainly inspires people to join them out of America, out of Europe.
What do you make of that American part of it?
Well, I think we were a little arrogant for a long time, sir, in regarding our young Muslim males as somehow immune to the propaganda of al-Qaeda and other groups that was effective everywhere else in the world. There's no one going to Somalia to fight or to Iraq to fight because they don't like gender equality or because they don't like liberty or elections. They're going there to help their brethren, as they see them, to either overthrow a tyrannical government, or they're going in response to what the British and the Americans have done in their country. Every person the British catch says, I went to Iraq to kill Americans and Brits because America and Britain invaded a Muslim country, namely Iraq.
But don't you think they would be doing this with or without that participation, or no?
Of the United States, sir?
Yeah.
They would be fighting in their own countries, but they would certainly be fighting each other more than they would be fighting us. ISIL could not ask for anything more than more positive for them than a British and Western and the United States intervention in their country. It will drive up donations, it will drive up recruitment, it'll drive up support in social media and on the internet.
Yeah.
It is the key to their success, not just an auxiliary, sir.
Michael, thank you. I think Michael Scheuer in Washington. Well, you know, the president is saying that he doesn't have a strategy to deal with ISIS, and that has been setting off a firestorm and prompting this question by no less than our own Ed Henry.
I wonder what you think about the optics of the president from that podium yesterday saying he still does not have a strategy to deal with ISIS in Syria militarily, and the next day, without that strategy, goes out and raises campaign money.
Well, the president did convene a meeting with his National Security Council immediately after leaving this podium yesterday to talk through with his top national security advisors, including top officials from the Pentagon, about our more broad, comprehensive strategy against ISIL. That included a discussion about the military options that are available to the president for dealing with ISIL in Syria. That's the responsibility of the Pentagon. There are dedicated professionals there who are responsible and take seriously their responsibility.
He can go out and raise campaign money, because I asked, because last week when he made the statement right after James Foley's beheading, and within minutes was on the golf course. Is he detached? Does he feel like the critics coming after him, it just doesn't matter anymore? Why is he still raising campaign money, playing golf, when he's acknowledging he doesn't have a strategy to deal with this?
Well, Ed, the job of any U.S. president is to be able to handle a lot of different responsibilities at the same time. That's why the president has a national security team in whom he has a lot of confidence.
Do those scenes ever scream for like little bubbles? You know, like they know they have to go to Ed and then go, "What, Ed?" Here we be. Edward, the great series of questions. I'm wondering, though, whether anything came of it, or whether I got a hint of Ernest throwing the Pentagon under the bus on this one, but that could be me. You're closer to the fire. But obviously a lot of fire now aimed at the White House and the president's demeanor and activity in the middle of all this.
Well, Neil, I pressed, others pressed, trying to get answers, because you're right. It needs clarification about what the president really meant. I think what the White House is trying to do today is say, look, he does have a military strategy when it comes to Iraq. And in fact, there were more airstrikes today, Neil, where that's the total now of 110 U.S. airstrikes in Iraq since the beginning of the month. The Pentagon revealing that's costing U.S. taxpayers $7.5 million a day, a cost they may be willing to bear because of this threat from ISIS. Where the president ran into trouble yesterday is maybe he was a bit more honest, a little more direct and blunt about the fact that he does not have a strategy to deal directly with Syria militarily. And you're right, he did kind of throw the Pentagon under the bus yesterday. Josh Earnest sort of doubled down on that when I pressed him today, which is interesting, because Pentagon officials, when they were asked about it today, said, look, the military is always ready. If the commander-in-chief wants a plan, they're putting plans together all the time. So there does seem to be a little bit of a tension there between the president and some folks in his cabinet, like the Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, you remember a week ago, was saying this is a bigger threat than al-Qaeda pre-9/11. And so what I think they were trying to do was put the brakes on this march towards military action in Syria. And the president may have succeeded in that, but in terms of suggesting no strategy, it's raising more questions about what's coming in the days ahead. What's he going to do about that, Neil?
Real quickly, obviously the president and the Prime Minister of Britain have the same intelligence data, or share the same information, and act on that. The Brits obviously moved to heighten their terror threat. We did not. Should we read any significance into that?
Well, it's interesting. We asked Josh Earnest about that. He says that the Department of Homeland Security is looking at the same intelligence. They've decided for now, he caveated, that we're not raising the terror threat level here in the United States. So is there a different interpretation in Britain? Is it perhaps, Neil, that there are more, we've heard about all these thousands of foreign fighters, Britain, U.S., about 50 countries that are helping ISIS over in Syria and elsewhere. There may be a bigger fear in Britain about more British passports over there and some of those foreign fighters coming back to Britain than the U.S., but we'll obviously see. This is something to be bearing very close watch on there.
Ed Henry, thank you, as always, my friend. I appreciate it. Well, with worries of a possible ISIS attack coming here, New Hampshire Republican Senate candidate Scott Brown is calling on Congress to pass legislation that would strip homegrown terrorists of their American citizenship. He joins me now. By the way, we did put out a call to his opponent, Democrat Jeanne Shaheen, to appear on this program. We have yet to hear back. But Senator, to you, and what you make of this growing force of Americans who end up fighting over there for ISIS. First, what's going on there? What do you think it is?
Well, first of all, they left their citizenship at the door, and they should not be able to hide behind that citizenship and get the rights and privileges guaranteed by our Constitution. If we have evidence that they are, in fact, over there fighting and they want to come back here and not to buy a house with a white picket fence, but here to kill and maim our citizens, they should not have that opportunity. We should allow them to stay where they are. And it's a bill that I filed twice. Senator Lieberman and I, we had a bipartisan effort on 2 separate occasions, and it went nowhere because of politics. What I'm hoping, Neil, is that just like after 9/11, that Congress will finally, find something where they can actually work together and immediately, if not come back right now, when they do come back, make it the first priority, because the president doesn't have a plan. He has an incoherent foreign policy. He doesn't have a plan. Well, how about a plan to keep those people there and not get them, allow them to come back home? That's a pretty good start to a plan, don't you think?
What if we're worrying about something that we need to be worrying about? They're not interested in coming home. They're interested in fighting the battle over there.
Well, that's fine. They can stay there. They can stay there, and we should then have the ability to go after them with all of our might and force and not allow them at some point in time, potentially, especially if they're captured, saying, whoa, I'm an American citizen. You can't, I want to be Mirandized and et cetera, et cetera. They leave that right at the door, and they've lost that right. And it should be something that we can find common ground, and make common sense solutions. The president, when he said he has no plan, I was floored, as well as many other people. I get an idea. How about calling together all of the world leaders, do a teleconference call, getting your joint chiefs, getting your national security team, and come up with a coherent, decisive, immediate plan? Because these people want to plant a flag in the White House. They want to march down Pennsylvania Ave. They want to come through our porous borders if they're not already here, and they want to create havoc and kill our citizens.
But what if it's David Cameron who's potentially overreacting, Senator, that he is heightening the threat level in Britain, and the president might be just trying to calm folks down over here? What is the right tactic, do you think, to take?
Neil, with all due respect, in New Hampshire we had one of our own beheaded by these folks and by these terrorists, murdered. And so it's personal, it's real, it's visceral. I think what they're doing, they're robbing banks, they're getting resourced. Chuck Hagel said it's a very serious and real threat. I think we need to approach it as such.
So wait, I just want to be clear, Senator. Then you're saying that because of this tragic beheading and other stuff we've seen since, that is grounds enough, you think, to heighten the terror alert in this country?
I think we should always be vigilant. That's up to the commander-in-chief and his team to make that determination. But when we see what's happening and we hear the rhetoric coming out of them, I'd rather be safe than sorry. I want to make sure, as I'm traveling around our country and my kids are doing the same thing, I want to make sure our citizens are safe. And if there's an opportunity to increase the terror alert and they're going to check a little bit more diligently, I'm okay, because the #1 constitutional right we have is to stay alive. And I'm going to make every effort, certainly through filing, or I can't file now, but if I get back, certainly file that bill and work very hard to be that check and balance to the president and his incoherent foreign policy, that's for sure.
Senator, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up some politics here. Mitt Romney and some of these latest polls, particularly in Iowa, he's running away with it. Now, he says he's not interested in running, but he did hold out the possibility the door could be open. What do you think of that? What do you think of him going for the trifecta?
Well, he was right on Russia. He was right on Obamacare. He's right on the economy. We would not, I believe, be in this situation if he was our president.
Do you think he should run again?
I would encourage him to do so. He's a good, honest, hardworking man, and our country needs a unifier, not a divider, and that's what we have right now.
So any of the other candidates are secondary to him in your eyes?
It's so early, Neil. I'm so focused on trying to go back to the U.S. Senate, make Harry Reid the minority leader, and anyone wants to help, they can go to scottbrown.com and help, and then take all those bills on his desk and put them on the president's desk and be there as a check and balance for these types of issues and all the other issues that everybody's waking up and just kind of shaking their head. I think those presidential things will work out as we move along.
Gotcha. Senator, always good seeing you. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you.
So, to that point, is Mitt about to hit the campaign trail? Someone who says it all depends on one thing, just one thing, and we might know very soon. 8 p.m. FBN. You don't get it?